do a quick recap to get caught up where we were, and then we can finish this thing out. So the key to doing these is pages 561 and 562. Please make sure you're looking at those pages, because that gives you the, gotcha. Yep. That gives you the, that tells you what's a debit to the buyer, credit to the buyer. And again, on your exam, what you're going to see is how much does your buyer have to bring to closing. But I do think we need to know what's going on with the seller, because as we learned last night, and as we are learning, just in general, as we're doing these practice questions, they like to give you distractors. And we've already decided a distractor's job is, you know, to distract you. So by letting the distractors win, we don't want the distractors to win. So being familiar with 561 and 562 is going to go a good way, and you guys getting through these problems. So let's just I'm not going to go back through all the math, but we're just going to do a quick recap. Remember, we did record last night, and I highly recommend you guys go back through the recording and do this at your own pace. Like I said, we really only have time to do one. If we have more time at the end, I'm happy to do another one with you guys, but don't wait for me at the end of the class. You guys got the practice and numerous sources, and I'll share that again with you in just a second. So what we did last night was went through our closing disclosure, our mini closing disclosure. And we started at the top and we were working our way down, and we identified things that are debits to the buyer and things that are credit to the buyer. So the first thing we came across was our sales price of $210,750. We said that was going to be a debit to the buyer because that's the money that they owe the seller. Our closing is happening on November 24th. And then we prorated our taxes of $2,610. When you guys are prorating, always remember two things. Draw your timeline so you can see the visual, so you can see the period of time that the seller owns the property and the period of time that the buyer will own the property. You know, ask yourself right there, right then and there, who owned it the most, the bigger part of the year, because that's the person that's going to owe them the most money. And then I want you guys to stop and ask yourself, who owes who? So I think by identifying that, not only can we determine who gets the debit and who gets the credit, but that also decides what side of the timeline we're figuring. Are we figuring the buyer's side those many days? Are we figuring the seller's side those many days? So who owes who is a huge question. So let's get warmed up. You guys tell me in a private chat. Well, no, you don't have to, because we already know the answer. When you see something like seller has paid, that means seller is paid the entire year. Put yourself in the seller's shoes. You've paid taxes for the whole year. Somebody bought your house. Is it fair for you to have paid the whole year's taxes? No. Don't you want some money from somebody? Absolutely. So who do you collect from? The buyer. So when the seller has paid, that means that the buyer owes the seller for their portion of the year. If taxes have not been paid, then we got one of two scenarios. You guys remember the magic date that breaks that scenario? The date that the tax bill is due? September 1st. Yep, you guys are ready for me. So, so if taxes have not been paid and it's before September 1st, then we're going to do a debit the seller, credit the buyer. If taxes have not been paid and it's after September 1st, that's when we do our double debit. And in the double debit, the attorney collects the seller's portion from the seller, they collect the buyer's portion from the buyer, and then the attorney will send one check into the county to pay this year's taxes. So again, practice that proration. I'll try. Request to repeat what I just said. Okay, so real quick. So taxes in this case has been paid. which means the seller's paid the taxes for the entire year. So the buyer owes the seller for their portion of the year. The other two scenarios that we looked at last night were if the taxes have not been paid. Everybody hear the difference? Have been paid and have not been paid. If they have not been paid, there's one or two scenarios it could be. If closing is before September 1st, it's going to be a debit the seller, credit the buyer. The seller will owe the buyer for the period of time that they own the property. If taxes have not been paid and it's after September 1st, we're going to see a double debit. Debit the seller for the period of time they own, debit the buyer for the period of time that they own. The attorney will collect from both and just send one check into Forsyth County. Proration practice, again, you guys have the recording, I think, going back through that at your own speed and just making sure you practice. And guys, remember what I said last night. In addition to the how much does the buyer have to bring to closing problem that we're working on, you very well may see a standalone problem just on prorating, or you may see a standalone problem just on interim interest. So getting the math for unit 21 could get you more than one question. Does that make sense? And prorating interim interest, I mean, that's something we do in the real world too. That's real world math because we're helping our buyers and sellers verify their numbers. So we prorated our taxes. We figured out that the buyer owes the seller. So we did debit the buyer for the prorated amount. Then we, oh, that's not going to work for me. Then we just went through, we were instructed to go through as custom to common practice. The following items should be made to common practice. How do we know what common practice is? Because we're familiar with 561 and 562. I can't stress that enough. This is the key. Those pages are the key to doing this problem. So knowing what we know, we determined the earnest money deposit was going to be a credit to the buyer. We told them when they paid that, they would get it credited back to them at closing. We had a loan of $175,000. We credited that to the buyer because the lender's bringing that in on their behalf today, the day of settlement. Again, if you can kind of think of the settlement statement as like a snapshot of today, what's going on today. And we know the buyer can't close without that money from the lender. So today it comes in as a credit. The buyer's going to spend the next 30 years paying the lender back. So we're going to credit the buyer the loan amount. We had a 1% loan origination fee and 2 discount points. Remember, any lender math is always of the loan amount. So we took the loan amount of $175,000. We figured the 1% loan origination fee. This is what the lender charges the buyer to originate the loan. And then we figured 2 discount points. That shakes out the number of discount points equals the percentage of the loan. What does the word of mean in a math problem? Multiply. I'm never going to have you guys see an of the same again, am I? So 2 points shakes out to 2% of the loan. So again, our 175. Then we figured interim interest, how much the buyer owes the lender on interest for their loan. Interim interest is always the day of closing to the end of the month, to the last day of that month. So in this case, we figured November 24th through the 30th. Remember our fancy technique. And we figured November 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. So we had 7 days of interim interest that the borrower owes their lender. That takes us back to our formula that we learned when we amortized in Unit 14. The balance or the loan amount times the interest rate gives us annual interest. And then last night we took annual interest and divided by 360 to get daily interest. Once we had that daily, we times it by 7. We figured out the buyer owes their lender $255.22 for interim interest. Every single day. In pre-licensing world, every single month has 30 days. They try to keep it easy for you guys. So in pre-licensing world, February has 30 days, October, May, December, all of them. Then we looked at
Julie,
yeah.
Julie, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a quick question. What number did we divide by 12 and times it by 7 to get the 255? I forgot what number we used.
Divide by 12. We found the annual interest and then we divided it by 360 to find daily.
Okay, so the annual, the 444? The insurance annual premium?
No,
Yeah,
you had to take,
the
you had to
loan
take-
amount or the balance times the interest rate. And that gave us annual interest.
Gotcha. And then,
Then when
okay,
we found annual, we divided by 360 to get daily.
okay. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, the numbers are running in.
I understand. And again, you guys, you're not getting it by sitting here looking at me, and I get that. I get that. But remember, you know, we don't have a lot of time for math built into this class, unfortunately, because remember, you're not taking a math test. Always remember that. You're not taking a math test. You're taking a real estate exam with some math in it. Okay. So I get it. And you guys, I mean, you just got to go through it, you know, a few more times to get it all and spend time on pages 561 and 562. Definitely. So then we looked at private mortgage insurance, 0.40% of the loan amount. Again, anything doing with the lender will always be of the loan amount. So we took our 175,000 times 0.4%, 0.40%, and we got our PMI. First year's homeowners insurance. Homeowners insurance is always, or any kind of insurance is paid in advance. So by the buyer paying for the first year at settlement, they are covered for homeowners insurance the first year they own the property. Due diligence fee is a credit to the buyer. Remember, we told them when we went under contract, you pay this due diligence fee, you pay this earnest money deposit, and they will both be credited back to you at closing. So we need to make sure we're going to honor what we said we would do. Buyer hires the attorney, so they pay the attorney's fee. Title insurance premiums for the new owner, the buyer, the new owner. We decided the deed preparation fee was our distractor because the seller pays that. But the buyer does pay to have the deed recorded, their survey, and then their nickel and dime fee, always some kind of courier fee or wire transfer fee or some other kind of fee. So that's going to be their fee. So this is where we ended last night. I got one more thing to talk about before we can finish this thing up. Do I have any general questions? Knowing we need to go through it. So the last thing we have to do to finish this, we got to talk about our loan escrows. And at closing, in addition to prorating the taxes, and in addition to the buyer paying the first year of the homeowner's insurance, the lender's also going to collect some money for taxes and insurance that they're going to use to originate the borrower's escrow account. Remember, every month you send your mortgage payment in, you're paying 1/12 of the taxes and 1/12 of the homeowner's insurance. And that money has to sit somewhere until those bills are due. So the lender originates an escrow account for the borrower so they can keep that money, those bills come due, and they have that money to pay those bills on their behalf. So not only do we need some money to originate to fund the escrow account, but the lender also wants to collect a little bit at closing as a cushion. We know how this works, right? Is there a really good chance that taxes could be more expensive next year than they are this year? Is there a pretty good chance? Yeah. Is there a pretty good chance that insurance could go up next year? Yeah, we're seeing lots of those fees and bills and stuff going up, aren't we? So I guess they could come down too, but let's be honest with each other. Most of the time we're seeing that go up. So by having a cushion, by collecting some extra at money for the at closing for the escrow, the lender has that cushion. So if taxes go up next year, in this case, they have 4 months extra to still pay that bill on their behalf. If insurance goes up next year, the lender still has 2 months extra to pay those bills on that behalf, on their behalf. So in order to do these, we want to start with the annual amount, which in some cases means you may have to go back up through the problem a little bit and remind yourself what the annual taxes and the annual homeowner's insurance are. So our annual taxes were $2,610. If this is the annual number, and I need to break it down to monthly first. So we're good on that piece, right? I have annual. To break it down to monthly, I just need to divide by 12. So I got 2610. So what we now know is that taxes are $217.50 per month. The lender wants to collect 4 taxes. So once we break it down to monthly, then we just need to times it by however much the lender wants to, in this case, 4 months. So 4 months of taxes is $870. And then we go through that same little exercise. Again, come up in the problem a little bit and see that our annual homeowner's insurance is $444. If that's annual, first thing we need to do is break it down to monthly. It's $37 a month. The problem tells us that the lender wants to collect 2 months to have in that escrow account. So that's going to be a total of $75. And both of those are going to show up as a debit to the buyer. So that's their escrow taxes. I'm almost out of room. And then their escrow homeowner's insurance. Can you guys see that bottom number, that $74? It's close, isn't it? All right, we're in though. That's the important thing. Questions on what we did? Yeah.
I do. I got a question.
Yeah.
I got the right answer with the 74
Uh-huh.
for the homeowner's insurance, but I thought we paid it for the $444. So why would I give additional if I paid it for the year?
Could it go up next year? Could it go up next year? Could homeowners insurance go up?
Yes.
So the lender wants a cushion. They want a little bit extra in escrow. Otherwise, they'd have to call you and say, Tiffany, your homeowner's insurance went up. You need to send me some money. So this way, by collecting it from you now, they can still go ahead and pay that bill on your behalf.
Okay.
Because they can only collect a 1/12 of annual taxes and annual insurance. So your mortgage payment will be a 1/12 of $444, right?
Okay. Okay.
But they can't collect it now. Next year, when it goes up, when it's $500, now they collect a 1/12 of the $500, right? But they can only collect a 1/12 of what it currently is.
And will that money that I paid, is it going to be credited?
So that's a great question. And yes, it will. If you pay off your loan or if you close, if you have any money in escrow, they're going to credit that back to you. So they're not taking your money, They're just using it to their benefit so they can still pay their bills. My husband and I paid off our condo last year, the end of the year. And, you know, it was New Year's Eve. It was a very good way to bring in the, bring in the new year. And a couple weeks later, I walked out to my mailbox and there was a check from the lender. And I was like, what is this? I just paid them and they're sending me money. But what they were sending me was what I had left in my escrow account. So absolutely, they're not taking it. They're just using it. Great questions. Anything else? So now the last step, and this is where you guys get to come in. The last step, I want you guys, no, clear wrong. I want you guys to just add. I want you to go through and add up all of the buyer's debits. Let's do this. All of the buyer's debits and all of the buyer's credits. So what we've done so far is we went through and we identified, this is a credit, this is the debit, credit, debit, da, da, da. So now we have it in a nice, neat, little organized fashion, don't we? We took it from this word problem and now we gave it two choices, either your credit or debit. So now what I want you guys in private chat, tell me what are all the buyer's debits and what are all their credits. And then we'll talk about what we're going to do the very last step. And some of you are ambitious. And if you want to share the answer with me, you're welcome to. You guys about 30 more seconds to figure out all your credits and all your debits. Okay. Then we add up all the buyer's debits. Buyers have more debits than they do credits. Makes sense, right? They're the one buying this house. So buyers are going to have more debits, which is why they owe. Debits are going to be greater than credits. So when we add up all of their debits, I get 200, well, there we go, $219,869.22. When I add up their few credits, I get $179,751. Debits minus credits tell us how much the buyer has to bring to closing. Debit minus credit. So now that we've tallied up all of their debits and we've tallied up all their credits, is that not right? 179, 750? That's not right? Uh-oh. 750? Is I off by $1? There. Does that look better? So we added up all their credits, got $219,869.22. We added up all their credits, we got $179,750. Debits minus credits are going to tell us, you're going to tell your buyer that they need to go get some certified funds, readily available funds. Because when you see them at closing tomorrow, they need to have $40,119.22. Again, you guys, this problem takes a while. I'm aware of this. So remember what we said last night. When you're taking both exams, you're always going to do the math last. Bookmark the math and save it for last. Of all of the math, you're going to save this problem for the very end. So what I'm telling you is when you're taking your tests, this is the very last thing you're going to do, because this is the one that'll take you the longest. And how you can avoid it taking longer on your test is by practicing, by getting those debits and credits. What questions do I have? We good? Can I erase it? Isn't that the truth? Somebody just said in the chat that she's thankful to know this is a future buyer seller. Because for those of you that have bought or sold a house, did you know this? And you didn't know, I mean, your agent, that's a big duty. That's a big responsibility we have to our clients, because, you know, buyers and sellers don't know how to figure these numbers. So helping them make sure they understand, making sure it's calculated absolutely is a big part of how we old car. That's a big duty that we owe them from old car. Yep. So just as a, I'm going to erase as a reminder of where we just looked. We're in the online learning system. And the Unit 21 material, we just did mini CD1 together in class. So you also have the answer key. So you have the recording, you can go back and watch, but then you also have the answer key figured here. And then you have some practice here. So there's mini CD2, mini CD4, and mini CD5, all with the answer keys. Some in your book, both in 21 and both in those 50 problems in the back of the book. And then don't forget too, you guys, this math workbook, because this math workbook also has some extra mini CD problems as well. So there's lots and lots of practice for you guys. So you can knock this one out pretty easily. You guys looked at the math workbook yet? Had a chance to look at that yet? Few of you. It's good extra practice. But again, we're not spending all our study time on math. We're going to spend some of our study time on the math, but not all of it. As far as I'm concerned, 14, 15, and 21 were our heavy math units. So we just officially crossed the slope and we're on the downward hill now. I did not just say we were done with math. Don't you smile. I did not just say we were done with math. So we're on the downward slope. We only have a little bit more math left to go. 17, 12, that's about it.
Okay, I have a question. On your test, you said we can have some paper, right?
Absolutely.
Does that, I don't know, 3 or 4, what kind of paper? Because look,
You start with 2 pages.
that's one problem.
You start with 2 pages of scratch paper, and if you need more, you communicate with me to get more. You
Okay.
start with 2. The reason I tell you to start with 2, do you know how many PSI Testing Center allows you to start with? 2. If you need more, you can get it. Remember, we're trying to prepare you for that state exam. So you start with 2. I want to share something with you guys before we move on into Unit 17. I had a conversation with one of you over the weekend, and something was said that just really stuck a chord with me that I wanted to share with the rest of you. So the person I was talking to is a retake, and missed it the first time by a very, very few points, which has got to suck. But she told me that going through it a second time, things are really clicking. She said, I went through the class a second time and it's like finance, I get it. Discount points, oh yeah, I got it. And things are just really starting to click. And what that resonated to me was the benefit of the YouTube channel. Because you guys have the ability to go through and listen to some of this stuff again and again and again and again. And that's a common thing that I hear you guys. The retakes say, oh yeah, second time, got it. So what that tells me is take advantage of the YouTube channel. Go back through, especially now. Tomorrow is like 2 weeks away. I just put that out there. So especially now as we are getting closer and closer, going back through agency and listening to it again, going back through contracts. You guys all got your report from the midterm, right? What's your section? What's your area of weakness? Going back through, and look, here's another retake in the chat. I feel the same way. It just, because the first time you're trying to take it all in, do y'all feel right now like you're drinking from a fire hydrant? Is that kind of how you feel? So going back through it again, you're going to hear things that you didn't hear the first time. You're going to hear things that didn't click, that didn't resonate the first time. So thank you guys for sharing. Please, please, please take advantage of that YouTube channel. Everything we've ever said is in that YouTube channel, and you can go back. You can start from day 1. You can start just in agency, however. Yes.
Was the report email it? Did you email us the
The
midterm report?
program did, Class Marker did. So if you didn't get your
Oh.
report, you know, check your spam, just in case Class Marker winds up in spam. But it gives you the breakdown, like it tells you the percentage that you got on agency, the percentage you got on contracts. And if for some reason you didn't get your report, please shoot me an email. Don't put it in the chat. I'll never see it. But shoot me an email and I'm happy to forward you your report if you didn't get it. But I just don't want you guys to, like I said, discount the power of the YouTube channel. We all remember the pandemic. March 2020 hit. It was tough, wasn't it? None of us were happy. And like many of you, our worlds were, you know, real estate instructors' worlds were shaken upside down. And, you know, the commission made us shut down for a week so we could figure out Zoom real quick, you know? So, I mean, we were given time, but, you know, we moved all from in person to Zoom, as did everybody else, had to shuffle rapidly. And knowing now what I know, I wish I would have recorded when I was still in person, because to me, that was the biggest benefit of going to Zoom. And when I go back in person, I'm going to have to get some equipment. I'm going to have to get some technology, because I now get the benefit. I definitely see the benefit of the recording. And I hope you guys do as well. So please, and if you need I'll try to remember to put it in the chat during break. If you guys still need the channel, I'll put the link in the chat during break again. But I just wanted to share that with you guys, because I think it does. It helps. Anybody spend a lot of time in their car? Oh, there it is. Thank you. Oh, but you just sent it to me. You guys spend a lot of time in your car? Do you spend a lot of time cleaning or doing busy work or something? You know, put your earbuds in and just listen. Just listen to it again. Anybody have your earbuds in while you're in bed at night yet? Are you sleeping with this stuff? Okay. It's a lot. If anybody ever told you getting a real estate license was easy, they lied to you. Just flat out, they lied. Let me, I can grab that. Thank you for sending. So here it is right now. So now I don't have to remember. There you go. Thank you. Right. Big deep breath. And we go on. Unit 17 is our appraisers unit. The key to get through this unit, y'all get to wear an appraiser's hat. Did you know you're going to get to wear an appraiser's hat? Actually, we get to toggle a little bit in this unit. We will wear a real estate license hat a little bit, but for the most part, we're going to be wearing an appraiser's hat in this unit. What we're going to talk about is real property valuation. So our roadmap, our guide for unit 17, we're going to talk about value. We're going to define value. We're going to explain the appraiser's process. And we're going to talk about the 3 approaches that the appraiser uses to help them determine value. And then there is a little bit of math. So we're going to calculate using the 3 different approaches, how they arrived at value. So starting on page 434, I think the first thing that we need to do, first paragraph on 434, is define what an appraisal is. And an appraisal is an estimate or opinion of value completed by a licensed appraiser of a specific property as of a specific date. Let's break this definition down. An appraisal is an estimate or an opinion. What? It's one person offering their opinion. It's one person offering their estimate, what they think the property is worth. If you had the same property appraised twice at the same time, could you have two different opinions? Could you have two different estimates? Yeah, this is just one person's opinion. Let's understand right now, the appraiser is not the one that determines value. The appraiser gives their estimate or their opinion of value. So if the appraiser isn't the one that gets to determine value, determine what it's worth, who do you think does? This is just one man's opinion, or woman, careful. This is one person's opinion. So if they're just offering their opinion, who do you think is the one that actually gets to determine this is what this house is worth? I'm seeing mouths move. Anybody want to guess? I got a guess in the chat. That's a good guess. Seems like it, doesn't it? And it's interesting the responses I'm getting for you guys. Can we agree to this going into it? That value is in the eye of the beholder? It really depends on whose eyes you're looking for. Let's just go ahead and put this out there. Y'all, to the seller, this is their home. Blood, sweat, and tears went into this home. You remember when little Johnny fell over there and scraped his knee? Oh, you know, there's memories, there's feelings. It's a home. To everybody else in the world, it's just a house. So the seller's probably going to put more value on it than anybody else, aren't they? Because they have that heartstring, they have that emotion attached to it. The appraiser is going to give us their estimate or opinion. The one that actually gets to determine what it's worth is the buyer. The buyer is to be the one to determine it is worth me to pay this sales price. Pretend just a second, not even put real estate aside. You guys are all buyers, right? You guys are all consumers. Do you ever go to the store and buy a new pair of jeans, or you go to Harris Teeter and buy a steak or something, right? We're all consumers out there every day. And we look at the price tag, and when we look at that price tag, we determine if it's worth us buying it or not, right? We are putting value on that steak at the grocery store, value on those jeans at the store. And that's the same thing, obviously a much bigger scale than a pair of jeans, but it's the same thing that the buyer in a property is doing. So while the appraiser gives his opinion, the one that actually gets to determine this is worth me spending my money on is the buyer. The appraisal is for the lender. The lender requires this. They want the appraiser's opinion because remember, the lender is going to originate the loan on the value, sales price or appraisal, whichever one is less. So they have the sales price. They know what the buyer and seller agreed to. They have the contract in their hand, but they want somebody to go out and give their opinion so they can determine how they're going to originate the loan. And that's the job of the appraisal, is to the appraiser is to offer their opinion to the lender so the lender can determine how they're going to originate the loan. In order to complete an appraisal, you have to have you have to be licensed. There's appraisal school, there's a test, there's like this huge mentorship. I think I've heard once you have to shadow like 200 appraisals before you can go out on your own. It's a big deal to become an appraiser. So it's not like they're just out there throwing numbers out. There's a lot of training and education that goes into it. Unless you are a licensed appraiser, we cannot determine value. We're going to talk in just a minute what we say, but I want you guys to take value out of your vocabulary right now, because the only person that gets to use that word is the appraiser. We'll talk about what word you get to use in just a bit. The appraisal is of a specific property. It is specific to the one that we're under contract with. It doesn't care about the house next door, the house across the street, or the house across the road. Of course, they're going to study the neighborhood and the whole area, as we're getting ready to talk about. But it's specific to that property. And the appraisal is only as of a specific date. Again, as we're going to learn in a minute, The information that the appraisers use to arrive at their opinion, that information is constantly changing. Isn't the real estate market constantly changing? We have highs, we have lows, we have ups, we have downs. So the appraisals, the homes and the properties in the neighborhoods that the appraisal is looking at to determine their opinion, those numbers are changing. It's only good for one date. Now, the lender will use it for up to 6 months, but it is only as of this specific date. What the appraiser is saying is, as of today, February 15th, I think this property is worth this much. So if the appraiser is the one that gets to determine value, not determine, if the appraiser is the one that gets to give their opinion, appraiser had off for just a second. What you and I get to do as a real estate agent, we get to do either a CMA or a BPO. CMAs are comparative market analysis, BPOs are broker price opinion. They're both very similar. They used to have a difference, but today we pretty much just use them interchangeably. And in the residential world, probably what you're going to hear the most is a CMA, comparative market analysis. Since we can't say value, what do we say? When you're sitting at that listing appointment and the seller looks at you and says, what is my home worth? Do not say the value of your home is. You just acted like an appraiser. You look at that seller and you say, I think your probable sales price is, and then you're going to give a range. If you're working in property management, you can use a CMA or BPO to offer a probable lease price in a range. Appraiser gets to say value in a specific number. You and I get to say probable sales price or probable lease price in a range. Be very, very careful how you answer that. Now, when I look at the seller and I say, I think your probable sales price is between this and this, what determines between this and this is going to be, condition of the home, the updates. How does your home look to others in the neighborhood? There's lots to take in. We look at a lot of pictures when we do CMAs. We can go into our MLS and see a history. Again, talking more about exactly what we're doing. But what I'm determining is probable sales price, which means I probably want to list it for a little bit more, right? I want to give ourselves some wiggle room when I put it on the market. Again, how much more than probable sales price? It depends on the condition of the home. It depends on the market. There's lots of what ifs. That's why it's so important that we're experts in our market. We know what's going on, so we know how to properly help the seller list their home. Same thing with the buyer. When the buyer wants you to write up an offer, we're going to do a CMA to help them determine that probable sales price, to help them determine what their good offer price, starting offer price should be. We're going to help them crunch numbers so they can make that educated decision, that informed decision. BPOs are generally conducted for a fee. You get paid. They're usually requested by a third party. So it's not the seller that's trying to hire you. It's not the buyer that you're going to write an offer up. For example, the real estate firm I used to work for had a relocation company up in Connecticut. And every once in a while, they would hire us to do a BPO to offer our probable sales price so they could get an idea for what the market was down here. Connecticut had no idea what Winston-Salem looked like. They chose me over an appraiser because I'm a heck of a lot cheaper. So they let me offer my probable sales price versus getting an opinion of value from the appraiser. As a full broker or a broker in charge, you can do a BPO for a fee. Provisional brokers cannot charge a fee to do a BPO. So as a PB, if you get called to do a BPO for a third party, You can do it, but you can't charge a fee. You got to drop that provisional status before you can start charging fees. And nobody can charge as part of our general brokerage services. That's just our job. When you're getting ready for a listing appointment, we do a CMA to discuss probable sales price. Could you imagine sitting at a listing appointment and the seller says, what should I sell my home for? And you say, well, you give me $300 and I'll tell you. What do you think the seller's going to say? Bye-bye. So this is just part of our job. Same thing when the buyer says, I want to write an offer. How much should I offer? Well, you cut me a check and we'll talk. Can you imagine? So just as part of our job as being a listing agent and a buyer's agent, we cannot charge a fee for that. Do you need to get an appraisal if you receive a loan? Absolutely. The appraisal is a requirement of the lender. The lender requires it. So if you're originating a loan, you have to get an appraisal. We're doing, again, CMAs, BPOs for buyers and sellers, possibly that third party. We're not doing these to help the lender originate the loan. We can't. That's the difference in us and them.
And Julie, what do you, I guess I'm hung up on the phrase part of general brokerage services. When would you do it outside of brokerage services that you would charge a fee for?
Maybe you have a for sale by owner that says, I have no interest in hiring you whatsoever, but can you just tell me what my home would be worth? You're not trying to get the listing. You
Okay,
just got a call from a FSBO.
okay.
Again, I'm a heck of a lot cheaper than an appraiser. Okay, so we'll come back to CMAs and BPOs. As a matter of fact, one of the approaches that the appraiser takes is very similar to what we do with the CMA and BPO. So we'll come back and discuss that. And I just happened to look up and see my time, so that's good. So let's take a break. We come back, we're going to put our appraiser's hat back on and talk about value. We're back. I am taking attendance. And we're going to put our appraiser's hat back on for a while. And in order to think like an appraiser, we need to define and discuss and understand value. So value, kind of what we said, is just the desired relationship between the item and the potential buyer. You have, and then you guys are telling me you're back. You've taken attendance. Yep. So you have this relationship between the product for sale. May that be a pack of gum, may it be a house, right? It's all consumers purchasing. And in order to determine value, value has to have dust. Value has to have dust. There's certain characteristics. The demand for value is the need or the desire. This is our economics 101. If you don't have a demand for it, then you don't have a buyer for it, do you? So to have demand, you have a desire, you have a buyer that wants to purchase it. Utility is, in determining value, says, how well is this going to meet the future owner's needs? How can they make use of this property? Scarcity, how scarce is the property? You guys may have heard that, for example, waterfront property tends to be more valuable. Waterfront property tends to be more expensive. The reason for that is because there's not as much to go around. If you have a lake or an ocean even, there's only so many properties, so many homes you can put on there. So that's going to affect the value. And then transferability just talks about the ease. How easily can it transfer? Is there clear title? Is there satisfactory property conditions? Market value then is the most probable price a property will bring in an open and fair market. Now, this is going to assume that you don't have the one foreclosure in the neighborhood without other foreclosures. Foreclosures tend to sell for less. They may bring down the value. I know we've talked about the housing market crash. And, prior to the housing market crash, appraisers wouldn't use foreclosures when they were studying, when they were trying to find value, because they're different. But then the housing market crashed and appraisers had to use foreclosures because there were so many. Could you imagine being the seller that had your value negatively impacted because you had a slew of foreclosures in your neighborhood? Those foreclosures negatively impacted the value of your home. We're not seeing as many foreclosures anymore. But it's all about the market. What's going on in the market? So when we talk about market value, the appraiser's saying, based on my opinion, this is what I think a reasonable buyer will buy. This is a reasonable price that I think a buyer will buy. And if we compare the market value to the market price, for example, the market value is the appraiser's process. The appraiser's telling you, don't look at that. The appraiser's telling you that they think the market value, this is the price that a buyer would be willing to pay for it. Compare that to the market price. That's what somebody actually paid for it. So the appraiser offers us the market value, what they think somebody will pay for it. The market price is what somebody is actually willing to pay for it. And then there's comparing market value to market cost. When homeowners do improvements to their home, maybe they paint or put down new flooring or replace the roof or whatever, whenever they do any kind of improvements to their home, homeowners are not going to get 100% return. I've always heard that the moment you drive a brand new car off the lot for the first time, it automatically starts losing value. This is the same way with that roof, with that new flooring. Now, obviously, a new roof has more value than a 30-year-old roof, but homeowners are not going to get 100% return. I'll share with you guys. I had a listing appointment a couple years ago, and it was the loveliest couple. And we got to the point of the listing appointment when they said, "What do you think our home can sell for?" So I whipped out my CMA and I was going over my numbers and comps and talking about my probable sales price. And I busted out what, I don't know, I think I said between 95,000 and 100,000. And that sweet couple shot themselves a look real quick. And I thought, uh-oh. And I said, "What did you guys think?" They were up to like 135. We're off. Big deal here, aren't we? I'm saying 95 to 100. They're saying, well, it's not over yet, so let's hang on. I said, "Where did you get that? Do you mind sharing me with you got that?" And at that time, he produced me with a piece of paper. And it listed all the money that they'd spent on the home. We put in a new water heater. We put in a new, deck. This is all everything that we did while we lived here. And in a sense, what they were doing was taking what they thought it was worth, plus all that stuff that they put in. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. You're not going to get that 100% return. Now, I did take his piece of paper back. I crunched some numbers again. I got with my team leader. I said, "Look with this with me," because I wanted to be fair. And I wanted to be fair to them. I didn't want to lead them to believe that I could sell their home when I didn't know if I could or not. So anyway, I went back and crunched the numbers again. And my team leader and I decided, maybe 110. But we didn't think there was any way 135. So I thanked them for their time. I did not feel in my heart of hearts that I could get them the money that they wanted. And when I lose a listing for any reason, I will stalk that listing because I want to know who gets it and how much they list it for. That listing never hit the MLS. And I fear, well, I'm speculating at this point, but I wonder if others didn't give the same probable sales price. You know what I'm saying? We all kind of felt the same. But guys, my point is you can't tally up everything that you spent on the property. And that's what we're doing with market costs, with past expenditures. You're not going to get 100% return. I'm all about homeowners doing what they want to do with their home. Just understand the next homeowner may not appreciate that. Understand the next homeowner may not see that benefit that you did. They may not see the value in it that you did. Some forces that affect value, there's social forces. This is trends in marriage and divorce rates, family size, longevity. We're seeing adults moving back home with mom and dad. What the heck? We're seeing mom and dad moving in with their adult children. We're seeing different social forces. Economic forces is our employment levels fluctuate up and down, absolutely affects value. Taxes, if taxes increase, it's going to affect value. Interest rates going up and down. All that is economic forces that affect value. What do you guys think happens to an area when, for example, Amazon says they're going to open a warehouse? How do you think that affects the value nearby? It blows up, doesn't it? Because everybody needs to live there. Everybody needs to work. They've created jobs, so they need housing. What about if a major manufacturer announces they're going to close their doors? They're going to shut the plant. What happens to value in that area? Now it goes down. So employment levels, wage levels. Political forces, this could include our government activities, zoning plans, any change for zoning plans, building codes. One thing I noticed in my years, let's see, if I've been at this for 22 years, how many presidential elections have I been through? I'll let you do that math. But one thing I've noticed when it's time for a presidential election, real estate takes a slight pause until after the election because everybody's waiting to see what the outcome is. I did not just say it stopped, but it takes a slight pause to see what the result of that election is. And when it changes sides from one side to the other side comes out of the woodwork to spend their money. They've been hanging on to it for the last 4 to 8 years. By the way, that's about as political as we get in this class. Just felt the need to throw that out there too. And then environmental conditions, physical forces. What's the proximity to jobs and amenities? You guys have your favorite grocery store. It's probably pretty close to your house, isn't it? Where you work, where you hang out. It's not. Where you work, where you hang out. We tend to stick to proximity of our amenities, what's around us. Public transportation, accessibility to public transportation can affect value. And then starting on page 437, we're just going to go through some appraisal terms. We talked about highest and best. You guys remember day one, unit one? Seems like so long ago, doesn't it? And we talked to you about, we introduced you to something of this idea of highest and best use. Highest and best use is the most profitable use for which a property is used. A property can only have one highest and best use at a time, but that highest and best use can change as infrastructure changes, as companies come and go, manufacturers, warehouses, as cities grow and decline. Highest and best use can and does change over time. And one job of the appraiser is to determine what the current highest and best use is and determine if the property is being used, if it's utilizing that highest and best use. Is it maximizing its value? The theory of substitution says that when essentially a consumer has two similar products, you're out there product shopping, and you have similar amenities, similar utilities, the theory of substitution says that the consumer will generally go towards the less expensive of the two. Again, we're comparison shopping. Supply and demand, we also mentioned, introduced you to in unit one when we first met. I'm not good at that tonight, am I? And supply and demand, we don't sit around in real estate talking about supply and demand. We don't sit around and talk about, oh, we're in high supply, low demand. In real estate, we use supply and demand to talk about whether or not we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market. Right now, we are currently still in a seller's market, not as strong as it was, but we are still in a seller's market. So when we're in a seller's market, what we're saying is that demand is very high. Supply is low. As that pendulum swings back and we get back into a buyer's market, we're going to see that supply is very high and demand is low. So supply and demand helps us determine the value depending on what type of market we're in. Conformity refers to how well a property matches its surrounding. Does it conform? Or does it stick out? Does it not? Have you ever been out on a lovely Sunday afternoon drive and you're in this 2-lane road, like out in the middle of nowhere, and you're going by single-story brick ranch after single-story brick ranch, and then you round the corner and bam, there's this monstrosity up on the hill that's like gated and 5 garage. Yeah, that thing doesn't conform. I'm not saying it doesn't have value. It doesn't conform. It doesn't match its surrounding area. Anticipation is the idea of some future benefit or detriment affecting the property. Maybe this is based on rumors, maybe this is based on fact, but somehow the people in that area know that something's going to happen that could negatively or positively affect the value and the anticipation of that coming. Do I have any Kernersville people? K Vegas people on the call? No? Anybody drive through Kernersville? Familiar with Kernersville? Okay. That dang belt loop, how long have they been planning that thing? I mean, I got to the Triad in like 2000 and they were talking about it. The anticipation of that belt loop coming has affected those properties that have been around surrounding the belt loop. So the anticipation. Contribution is how an improvement will add overall value to the property. It's not so much about the cost, but how it contributes. How does it contribute to the overall? Competition. With competition, I tend to think of like a retail center, a strip mall. By Winston-Salem people, for example, you go to Thruway Shopping Center. Let's say you go to Thruway Shopping Center for, is Mo still over there? So you go to Thruway for lunch. What does Thruway want you to do after you eat lunch? They want you to go to Rack Room Shoes. They want you to go to that little kitchen gadget store. They want you to go into Dewey's and get a cake square, right? The idea is that competition can attract future profits. So if they can get you to Thruway, they want to keep you there, continuing to spend money. And then change is the appraiser studying the economic conditions, the physical conditions, and trying to predict the future, trying to determine what the future will be and how that's going to affect the value of the property. So again, principles of values, basic understanding, but these are terms that are very familiar to the appraiser. Then over on page 438, we start talking about the appraisal process, the things that the appraiser does. They really study two classes of data. Specific data is data about the property itself. What is the property that the appraiser is trying to put value on? 123 Main Street. General data then is about the neighborhood, the area, the surrounding properties. They take it all in. The steps that the appraiser takes, I didn't recreate the wheel. These are on pages 438, 439. I would just look these over just to help give you a better understanding of what the appraiser, that appraisal process. So 438, 439, make yourself a note to look at those steps. And what I want you guys to do right now, and I almost got to get my readers. Y'all got your readers handy? Turn with me to page 441. I'm not kidding. 441 is a sample appraisal. Now we're going to talk about this now. And then once we talk more about the appraiser's process, we're going to go back through and look at it again. But what you're looking at is the appraisal report. This is what the appraisal provides the lender in the case of originating a loan. And you guys see the black bar on the left-hand side? That's your different categories. So there's your subject, contract, neighborhood, site, improvements. Those are the different categories of the appraisal report. Those categories are blown up and explained to you on page 440. So when you look at 440, you see like subject neighborhood site. Those are the categories in the black bar, 441, 442, and 443. Over on page 442, on our report still, there's a sales comparison approach. We're getting ready to talk about that. We'll talk about the appraiser's reconciliation. 443 is some of the appraiser's additional comments. There's the cost approach to value. We'll talk about that. The income capitalization approach. We'll talk about that. And then the PUD information. A PUD is planned urban development. The idea with a PUD, it's mixed. And the idea with a PUD is you can live, work, and play here. So not only do you have apartments and condos, but you have the grocery store, you have a medical plaza, right? You have your whole little community right here. And that's the idea of a PUD, is you can live, work, and play. So again, we'll come back and look at this once we better understand the sales comparison approach, cost approach, and income capitalization approach. But this just gives us an idea of what we can expect, what the lender's looking for. And back on 442, there at the bottom, the reconciliation, the very last line, all the appraiser cares about is all the lender cares about is the appraiser's opinion of $265,000 as of, I need my readers, August 25th, 2016, that very last line down there. That's the only thing the lender's looking for. This whole thing just for that one number. That's what the appraiser is telling the lender. In their opinion, they think the property is worth. Questions so far? So now what we're going to do is talk about the three approaches to value that the appraiser can take. There's three different things that the appraiser can and may do to help them arrive to their opinion. And the first approach, the first method, is called the sales comparison approach. And with the sales comparison approach, the appraiser is studying the subject property, and they're comparing that to recently sold similar properties nearby. So they're studying closed comps in the area. The theory behind the sales comparison approach is by studying recently sold closed comps nearby. By studying those, the appraiser can determine this is what a buyer was actually willing to pay for this house. So based on that information, we can use the sales comparison approach to put a value on the subject property. How close nearby, a lot of it depends on density. If you're downtown, you may only have to go out quarter or half a mile. If you get out of town, more rural area, you may have to study, a few mile radius. So density determines how close. We want things as similar as possible to the subject, comps as similar as possible to the subject. Always remember, no two properties are exactly the same. Even in your cookiest cutterest of neighborhoods, everything changes when you walk in the front door. No two properties exactly. Condos, townhomes, they all look the same from the outside, right? But as soon as you walk in the front door, it all changes. When we're looking for similar, we want to try to compare like condos to condos, townhomes to townhomes, right? Similar styles. Would it be fair to compare a 2-story brick home to a 1-level condo? They're not even in the same ballpark, are they? So we want similar, we want similar as possible. And the appraiser is looking for similarities like, for example, similar square foot, similar year built, similar number of bedrooms, similar amenities. Those are the comps that they're looking for this subject. So they go out and they study the subject and they learn everything about the subject. And then they go study everything that closed recently nearby. And from those closed comps, they pick the ones that are the closest to the subject property. The sales comparison approach is the best approach for the appraiser when trying to determine the value for resale single-family homes and land. So when we talk about the three approaches and the things that the appraiser is doing to arrive at value, if it's a resale single-family home or land, they can almost always use the sales comparison approach. And when they're looking at this, they're going to make adjustments to the comps. They're never, ever, ever going to adjust the subject. The subject is the one that we're trying to arrive at a price, at a value. The appraiser is trying to arrive at a value. So they're studying comps and they're finding things that are as close as they can, understanding there's no such thing as an exact match. So in studying these comps and making monetary adjustments to the comps, they can get these comps close to the subject property. Again, we know what a buyer was willing to pay for this comp. That's why it's a closed comp. We know for sure what they were willing to pay for it. And based on that, what adjustments can we make to make it match the subject? Never, ever, ever adjust the subject. So I want you guys to do a little exercise with me, and I need you to give yourself some room. So maybe you want to push back so you don't touch your computer screen. If you want to stand up, that's fine, as long as you're able. And by able, I mean decent from the waist down. We're on Zoom now. But give yourself some room. And let's talk about how we can adjust these comps to match the subject. Once you take your left hand, make a fist and hold it straight out in front of you. We're going to call your left hand your subject property. And what we're going to learn is that your left hand is never going to move. I'm going to have your left hand going to sleep by the time I'm done with you guys. Now I want you to take your right hand, make it a fist, and hold it straight up over your head. If your left hand is your subject, let's call your right hand comp 1. Comp 1 has a feature, has a product that's superior to the subject. Isn't it higher than the subject? So let's say your subject has 3 bedrooms and comp 1 has 4. Or let's say comp 1 has more square footage, or maybe it has a fireplace and the subject doesn't, right? Some feature the comp has more than the subject. What do I have to do to the comp to make it match my subject? I have to lower it. I have to decrease the amount of that extra bedroom or that square footage or that garage. Whatever made it higher, whatever made it more, I have to decrease. All right, take your right hand, shake it out. Keep that left hand up. I told you it was going to go to sleep by the time I got done with you. Now make a fist on your right hand and hold it down next to your side. Subject stays the same. Now let's call your right hand comp 2. So maybe your subject has 3 bedrooms and comp 2 has 2. Or maybe your subject has, I don't know, pool, and comp 2 does not have a pool. The subject has something more than the comp does. So what do we need to do to make the comp 2 match the subject? We increase. We add to the comp to match the subject. Did your subject ever move? Did your left hand? Okay, you can shake it out now. I'm done with you guys. The point is you never, ever, 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 ever. That's something else I got y'all doing at PSI Testing Center, by the way. I wonder if they identify you guys through me. I don't know. But when we start adjusting these comps in a minute, we're never, ever, ever gonna adjust the subject. We always adjust the comps to match the subject. If it's a superior comp, we adjust it down. If it's an inferior comp, we adjust it up. Use the hand trick, it helps. Now, for your tests, for real estate, I have no idea what the value of a bedroom is. I have no idea what the value of a fireplace or garage or square footage. It's not my job, that's the appraiser's job. So obviously for your test, when they want you to adjust, they got to tell you these values. They got to tell you that a bedroom goes for X amount, a fireplace goes for X amount, square footage. They've got to give you that information. If you want to learn how to determine the value of a bedroom and a fireplace and a garage, once you get your real estate license, sign up for appraisal school. One thing at a time though first, okay? But rest assured, because we're not an appraiser school, we don't have to find value, but we do know how to adjust those comps when given the value. And we're heading there. That's where we're heading. Any questions so far? So some things that we can look at with the sales comparison approach. Date of the sale, again, we want things that are recently sold. Typically, the appraiser tries to go back, things that closed within the last 6 months. If it's a slower market, they may have to go back a year, right? If you didn't have anything that closed in the neighborhood in the last 6 months, they may have to go back further. Location, as close as we can to the subject property, similar location. You cannot compare a home in Greensboro to a home in Winston-Salem. You can't do it. You've changed the location. You can't compare a home on one side of Greensboro to the other. You change that location and you change the value. Physical features, the appraiser is going to look at physical features such as age, square footage, number of bedrooms, garage, fireplaces, whatever they consider could help them determine that value. It's not really fair to compare a home that was just built last year to one that was built in the 60s, is it? 1964 or something. Building products were different in the 60s. Building codes were different in the 60s. So we want similar age. And then the terms and conditions of sale. Was this a typical mortgage? Was this a buyer purchasing on their own? Was it a seller that was forced to sell, for example, foreclosure? What are the terms and conditions? And again, they're looking for things that are similar. A lot of that is driven by the market. So in the sales comparison approach, when the appraiser is selecting comps, again, they're looking for comps that are similar to the subject as possible. The fewer adjustments they have to make, the better. Understanding they're never going to find a comp where they don't have to adjust anything, because no two properties are exactly the same. So we want similar, recently sold. The appraiser is going to assign a dollar value to the differences. The appraiser is going to assign a dollar value. And then they don't use simple averaging. They use correlation. Correlation is just a weighted average. A fireplace may have more weight than, I don't know, another bedroom or a half bath or something, right? They may just use a correlation, a weighted average. Not all things have the same weight as others. Turn with me in your book to page 446. And what we're looking at is an appraiser's sample sales comparison approach. So we've identified our subject property, 155 Potter Drive, page 446. And the appraiser's gone through and identified the features of 155 Potter Drive. It's in a good location. It's 60 years old or 6 years old. There's the size of our lot, landscaping, number of rooms, number of bedrooms, etc. So they went through and they studied 155 Potter Drive. And then this appraiser was pretty ambitious, and they went out and found 5 good comps. General rule of thumb, the recommendation is that they find 3 good comps. So we have something to actually compare. But this appraiser found 5. And what we can see in the first line of the comps, A, B, C, and D, and E, is the sales price. This is what a buyer was willing to pay for, no, this is what a buyer did pay for comp A. This is what a buyer did pay for comp B, comp C, comp D, and comp E. And then the appraiser went through and they studied each comp as it relates to the subject. So how does comp A relate to the subject? How does comp B relate to the subject? And you can see where they made adjustments. For example, in comp B, they determined that the location was poorer. So with your left hand out, subject property is your left hand, your right hand down below you. How do you make your right hand match your subject, match your left hand? He, she added. They added the difference of that poorer location to make the comp match the subject. Same thing over in comp C. They deducted $5,000. They said, this is the subject property's lot. This is comp C's lot. Which one has more? Comp C. So how do we make it match? We deduct. So we go through, or the appraiser goes through and makes their adjustments to the comps, never ever to the subject. Makes the changes to the comps, the adjustments. And then the last thing you have there is the adjusted value. The appraiser's not changing the purchase price. They're saying, this is what comp A is worth as it relates to the subject. This is what comp B is worth as it relates to the subject. If you change the subject, then all those comps would change. This is only for studying 155 Potter Drive. And based on that sales comparison approach, the appraiser can say they'd sum that up. Do they have the number there for us? Indicated values 116,500 in that paragraph. So they tallied all that up, and what they would report to the appraiser, to the lender that was trying to originate a loan for the buyer for 155 Potter Drive, was that they think the home is worth $116,500. Always adjust the comps, never ever adjust the subject, and use the hand trick. I'm telling you. Changed my life when I learned the hand trick. Questions?
I'm confused. You're adding and subtracting on a house that's already been sold for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure. I guess I'm just not understanding how does that give you honest estimate?
So we're not adjusting the price. We know what it already sold for. We can't change that, right? We're not going to go back to the buyer and say, I owe you money. I mean, we know what they've already paid for it. But that's just it. We know what a buyer was willing to pay for property A, and these are the conditions of property A. So in order to find what a value for Potter Drive for our subject property is, by making those changes to A, and we're not adjusting the price, we're adjusting the value of A. So as A compares to Potter Drive, it has a superior product. What are we adjusting for? It is the exterior condition. So here's your Potter Drive. Here's A. It's outside is better. It's just in better shape. It's in better condition. It's better taken care of. Maybe they do better with the weeds and the landscaping. And to give us an idea for what somebody would pay for Potter Drive, we're going to make corrections, adjustments to the comps to get an idea. If this is what you were willing to pay for A, if I can adjust A to match the subject, then this is probably what somebody would be willing to pay based on what they did pay for A. The appraiser has no idea what a buyer's going to pay for Potter Drive. Remember, they're just offering their estimate or their opinion. But in order to throw a number out there, they got to do some research. And the best research, this method is probably the best method out there, because we can study what somebody's already paid for these properties and how does it relate to the subject property.
So basically, you're just adding and subtracting. You're just deducting, adding to kind of get an idea of what the price should be for Potter.
There you go. That's right. There's no guarantee. When the appraiser slaps a price on a home, there's no guarantee that's what a buyer's willing to pay for. This is why this is an opinion or a value. And their opinion or their estimate of value comes from the fact that buyers recently bought these homes, A, B, C, D, and E, for this amount. But because no two homes are the same, we got to make some adjustments. We got to make the ones that are as similar to the subject as possible even more similar.
Okay, so I'm looking at this on B where it says the location's poorer plus 6,500. So we're saying 6,000 because B compared to A is 6,000 off.
Nope, B compared to the subject. Your subject is good. B is poor, which means now your hand's down by your side. You compare each comp to, we're not comparing comp to comp. We're comparing comp A to the subject, comp B to the subject. So when studying comp B as it relates to the subject, this is the subject's location. This is comp B's location. And since it's poorer, it's less than. To make it match, we're gonna increase our right arm and add. It's less, it's down here. How do I make it match? I add. I bring it up to the level of the subject.
So you already have a price in mind then? Because where do you come up with the 6,500?
That's the appraiser's job. They're the ones that can put that value on exterior conditions, locations, number of bedrooms, number of baths, square footage, garages.
So basically, you're just saying, okay, the subject matter is in a good location. B is in a bad location. So let's give it let's add 6,500. We know we can get $6,000 more because this is in a
Because
good
of the
location.
location.
Yes.
We're making adjustments to the comps to match the subject. The sales comparison approach is the closest approach, the closest appraiser's approach to value to what we do. So when the appraiser is doing the sales comparison approach, the closest thing that we have to compare it to is our CMA. Again, we don't know values, but our CMAs allow us to make non-value adjustments, if you will. Even in MLS, it doesn't tell me what the cost of a bedroom goes for. But I can do a CMA to say, well, if this has 3 bedrooms and this has 2, there's going to be more value in 3, maybe more bedroom in 3 bedroom than there is in 2. What the appraiser does is the sales comparison approach to determine value. What the real estate agent does is the comparative market analysis to determine probable sales price or probable leasing price. Our CMAs are generated in MLS. We can pull reports in MLS, and we can choose what features we want to compare. Again, I'm not reporting a specific number. I'm reporting in a range because I don't have these values. Doing CMAs, I mean, I can make it sound real easy. You log into MLS, click, and you got a CMA report. There's a lot more involved than that. You're going to get training from your firm. I know, for example, the Winston-Salem Board of Realtors, they offer CMA training like once a quarter. It's a really valuable tool to have and keep that fresh. Remember, you guys, it's an opinion. So couldn't we walk away with 2 different opinions? I mean, if I study square footage and you study number of bedrooms, we're presenting 2 different things to the seller in our competitive listing appointment, aren't we? So having an understanding, studying further these CMAs and how these work, because we want to do good CMAs so we can be competitive in competitive listings. So the CMA is the informal version of what the appraiser does with the sales comparison approach. When you are looking, when you're communicating with the seller or the buyer, and you're going over your CMA with the buyer or the seller, we're always going to make sure that we report in a range. Don't just give one number. Say, I think your probable sales price is going to be between $95,000 and $100,000. Based on my opinion, when you get an offer, the purchase price on that offer is going to be between $95,000 and $100,000. When we're doing our CMAs, appraisers in the sales comparison approach, they only always study closed comps. That's all they ever look at is closed. But when you and I are doing our CMAs, we're also going to study, for example, current listings, active listings. Why would I want to study an active listing when I'm trying to help a seller price their home? Why would we want to study active? Does your family hear you guys talking? It's so funny to watch you guys, and your family's like, what are y'all doing in there? The reason we're going to want to study active is to know what our competition is. Don't we want to help the seller price to be competitive? So if the house across the street's for sale, if the house, half a block away or half a mile away is for sale, it allows us to see what the current competition is. The other thing we're going to do on our CMA that appraisers may or may not consider is we're going to look at expired listings. It never sold. The listing agreement expired, thus it expired from MLS. What do I get from this?
A good price, so you know not to sell it for that.
For whatever reason, a buyer was not willing to buy this house at that price. Why? I don't know. But for whatever reason, in this period of time, it expired. No buyer was willing to pay for it. Because it was overpriced? I don't know. I'm not studying that property. But what I do know is that nobody was willing to buy this home at that price. So studying expired, again, we're trying to keep our sellers competitive. Some sellers blow my mind. You roll up and you say, well, based on my research, I'm going to say your probable sales price is between $125,000 and $132,000. And you say, this market and I say we go ahead and list it for $140,000. And sure enough, the seller's going to look at you and say, why can't we do it for $175,000? Why can't we do it for 175? Because I just showed you a CMA that says probable sales price between 125 and 132. But this gets us having that conversation so we can agree on a list price. And if we can't agree on a list price, guys, I need you to consider taking that listing or not. Because if this seller is dead set on 175 and you can't make the numbers work out to 175, it may not be worth your time, your marketing dollars, your open house Sunday afternoons, right? Think about, there's a lot that goes into the listing. And one thing, I don't know much about life, but one thing I do know is that the numbers don't lie. And when you properly know how to do a CMA and you feel good about the CMA you did, if 125 to 132 is what you believe in your heart of heart, depending on the market, of course. It's the last couple of years, I could have sold that thing for 250, no problem. But we're coming out of that market. And these markets are changing. And that's why we're the experts of our market. We're the experts of our industry. And we know what's going on. I have walked away from listings because I did not think I could get the seller what they wanted. It's a decision you need to make. But doing these CMAs and helping the sellers read these numbers, see these numbers, is going to help them get a true representation of what they can sell their home for. And if you have 6 homes that expired around 175, isn't that good to show the seller? Isn't that good to say, look, 6 of your neighbors tried to sell at 175 and they were not successful? This gives you proof. This kind of gives you ammunition. The listing price is completely up to the seller. I provide the facts for them to make an informed decision.
I got a question for you, Miss Julie.
Yeah.
Is this CMA after I've been hired, or is this something like, you know, they gave me a call, I'm looking for a broker, I would like to come and meet with you, and my property is such and such, I already have it ready for them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because Tiffany, if a lot of sellers are doing competitive listing appointments, so if you're up against another agent and the seller looks at you and says, what should I sell my house for? I don't know, I haven't looked at the numbers yet. And the other agent says, well, here's my CMA, my report, da 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 da, who's going to get it? So this is all part of our listing, preparing for our listing presentation, understanding I don't know what the inside looks like until I get there, right? So there may be some last minute adjustments, but we can get an idea to at least have this conversation. We're probably not signing a listing agreement today. We're not, married to a price today, but it kind of gives us a jump start for the conversation. It's part of the preparations. CMAs need to be kept current throughout the listing. So again, we're coming back into a market where homes, our average days on market is up to like 25, 30 days. Last year at this time, it was like 6. So our days on market is coming up. And guys, it's not unusual for a home to be on the market for a month or 2 or 3. And this is where we're getting this normalization that we're getting back into. And it might be you've been on the market for a couple months and the seller says, is it time to start talking about adjusting the price? Anytime we need to talk about adjusting the price, we need to do a new CMA. Because remember, we're only looking at recently sold. So if you're looking in the first CMA, when you got the listing, some of those comps might have fallen off. They might have gone over their 6 months. And then you have new comps because things that have recently closed. So whenever we discuss price with the seller specifically, we need to do a current CMA. We need to do a fresh one on what it looks like today and compare it to what it looked like 3 months ago when you listed it. What do you think? Once you do a CMA for the seller, are you going to keep it? You going to put it in your file, in your transaction file? Yep. So what do we document? Everything. So anytime we do a CMA, that thing needs to go into your documentation file. I know a lot of real estate firms, mine included, are starting to take a step further, and we're making the seller initial those things, acknowledging that they have seen that CMA. Document, document, document. Buyers too. Document. Last thing before break, CMA is a client level service. And what I mean by that, customers get market data. Clients get interpretation of a CMA. They get a discussion, they get a conversation, they get to know what this means and that means and how that could affect their buying or selling decision. Customers don't get interpretation. CMA is a client level service. If you wanted me to explain this to you, I guess you should have hired me. I put it a little bit nicer than that if I were you, but we can hand them a piece of paper and say, here's some market data. Let me know what you decide to do. Clients, we're going to sit down, we're going to go over it with them, we're going to have a conversation. So let's take a break. We come back, more on the sales comparison approach and CMAs. Have anybody ready to sign up for appraisal school yet? Some of you are like, not even a little bit. I find it interesting. Maybe that's what I'll do in the next phase of my career. I don't know. I've looked into it. But it's a lot of work to get your appraisal license. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I think it's interesting though. And it's got math, and you know how I feel about math. So it's like a win-win for me. All right, we're back. Cameras are on. I'm taking attendance. So still talking about our CMA. Remember the CMA, this is the closest thing that we do to the appraiser's sales comparison approach. Not exact, because again, you guys, we don't know value. I don't want you guys stressing out about it. I don't know the value of a bedroom. For your test, they're going to tell you bedroom's worth X amount. It'll give you the numbers that you need to adjust. Are their hours more flexible compared to realtors? Yeah, they can usually really work just Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 if they want to. So they're not out, showing properties or anything. Yeah, so appraisers, they work, the lender orders them. So they know how many they have to do in like a day or a week or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So they do have some more. Things got interesting in the appraisal world because if you ever sold a home, you know that the appraiser, they come inside and they make an appointment. They just don't barge in, but they make an appointment. They come in because they got to see what the inside looks like. They don't probably spend more, but 20, 30 minutes in the home. Most of their work is done in front of the computer, but they do drive around the neighborhood, go inside, Google Maps. You can learn a lot on Google Maps. Interesting. We were talking about the pandemic. During the pandemic, sellers didn't want appraisers in their home. Sellers didn't want a lot of people in their home. And appraisers didn't want to go in other people's homes. So appraisers were doing drive-by appraisals, which, yeah, I see some of your faces going, what? That's exactly how we felt about it too. So I'm glad that didn't stick. Yeah, they just drive by and like, oh yeah, I think it's worth that. Maybe they would pull in the driveway. I'm glad that's no longer a thing. I'm glad that didn't stick and we're past that. But we all kind of had to do what we had to do to keep going during that time, didn't we? And that was one thing that they did. So very interesting. So the CMA is what we do. Compare it to the appraiser's sales comparison approach. Again, they're the ones that get to say things like value. You and I say probable sales price. So let's bring home this CMA and talk about how it relates to us, the broker. The real estate commission is going to hold us accountable if we don't perform these things in a competent manner. I'm not kidding. When you go into MLS, you could click on any button you want to generate the report. There's no limitation on what you can't click. And that's where the training comes into place that you guys are going to want to get in with your firms and with, your local board of realtors, for example, because they're going to tell you which are the best buttons to click, how you can do these things in a competent manner. That is beyond the scope of this class. It's teaching you how to do a CMA. We're just introducing you to the idea. And like I said, I've been doing it for how many years, and I had a seller and I had a dispute. And so I took it to my team leader and, her and I put our heads together. So sometimes pulling the help from a seasoned agent is what we call ones that have been in the business for years and years and years, a seasoned agent, helping pull in their expertise and their knowledge. Absolutely. I am not, and I never have been afraid to ask for help. And this includes when I'm doing a CMA, for example. It's important that we're performing these things. We're going to see this again briefly when we look at our license law and commission rule comments. Y'all, please don't forget about the comments. If you haven't been reading those, please start. But within the comments, it does talk about BPOs and CMAs. And the other thing that's really interesting, and we don't need to know the numbers, but some things are license law or commission rule. CMA and BPOs fall under both. CMAs and BPOs fall under license law and commission rule. So you're going to find them when you get out in the business and you start looking. And there's certain rules that the commission wants to see if we're performing these things. Any questions? Thank you. So we're going to look at a couple examples. I call this math because I guess we got to pick up a calculator, but really the sales comparison approach math is just adjusting those comps to match the subject. And there's two different things to consider. So remember when I told you that if we're adjusting for your test, for sales comparison approach for your test, they're going to have to give you the value. Well, I kind of gave you a teeny tiny white lie, just a little one, just a little lie. If they don't give you the value, they have to tell you how to get to it. So for example, they may say, to determine the value of a bedroom, the appraiser found properties that are identical. I got two comps that are identical, except that they have a different number of bedrooms. Square footage is the same, fireplace, garage, bathrooms, type of home, stories, age, location, everything else is the same. The only thing that's different is comp 1 has 3 bedrooms and comp 2 has 4. So how do we find the value of a bedroom? We deduct the difference of the two. So if they don't tell you the value, you may, and I'm stressing the word may, because I don't know if you'll see this or not, but if they don't tell you that a bedroom is worth $4,500, then they have to give you this kind of information to let you find that. Does the broker ask the client if they want a CMA, or do we automatically create it? Yep, that's part of our general brokerage services. That's a duty that I owe my buyers and sellers to help them determine what's a reasonable price. Yep. Some consumers may not even know that such a thing exists, so they wouldn't know to ask for it. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to make sure that we present it to them. Let me stop sharing this for 1 second. Don't go anywhere. What I think you're probably more apt to see on your test than finding the value is going to be something very similar to what we saw on page 446. So let me come back and get you guys. Where did you guys go? There you are. So let me come back and grab you guys. And I think what you're going to see for the sales comparison approach is going to be something that looks more like this. It's going to give you information on the subject property, a comp, 2 comps. This is just an example. So I just gave us 2 comps. The appraiser is encouraged to find 3, but we're always going to do what the question gives us. And when I see this paragraph just babbling on about all kinds of information, it makes me a little nervous. It makes my eye twitch a little bit. So how I handle this, I like rows and columns. I put it in a format that looks very similar to what you guys are looking at on page 446. So I'm going to question comes in, is this only for listings or working for buyers as well? CMAs we're going to do for both. Because remember when that buyer says, oh man, this is my dream home, how much should I offer? You need to have an educated response. You just can't blurt a number out there, right? So we're going to do CMAs. Great question. We're going to do CMAs for both buyers and sellers. So we're going to set ourselves up. So I have my subject, and my subject has 3 bedrooms. I'll fix that in a second. 2 baths, and it has a fireplace. We'll just say, yes, it has a fireplace. So the things that we're studying on the subject are the bedrooms, the bath, and the fireplace. So we studied our subject. Now if we study comp 1, we see comp 1 has 3 bedrooms, it has 1 bath, and it does not have a fireplace. And then we go through and we study comp 2. Let's see, it's got 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. And yes, it has a fireplace. So the appraiser's gone through, or I'm sorry, the agent, the CMA, either one, very similar, has gone through and we studied the subject. We went out and found our closed comps and we found the features of the comps that we're going to choose to study. Again, you guys, this is why it's an estimate, why it's an opinion. Could another agent come in and study different features? Sure, there's no rule that says only study bedrooms. This is where having an education, having a knowledge of what's relevant, of what makes for a good CMA, is where that training comes into place. So I know that comp 1 sold for 118,000 recently. And I know that comp 2 recently sold for 126. So now what we need to do is adjust each comp to make it match the subject. So let's look at comp 1 together, and then I'll let you guys do comp 2. So if we look at comp 1 together, my subject has 3 bedrooms. Comp 1 has 3 bedrooms. Do I need to make any adjustments? Do I need to do anything? No, they both match. They're both pretty even, right? My subject has 2 baths. Comp 1 only has 1. Do I need to do something to adjust the comp to make it match the subject? Show me thumbs up for increase or thumbs down for decrease. What do I need to do to the comp to make it match? And doing the hand trick, we know that we need to increase. We need to increase the comp to match the subject. The problem tells me the value of a bedroom. In this area, this study, it has been determined that a bedroom goes for $4,500. So to the sales price, I'm going to have an adjusted value of $4,500. I'm going to adjust the comp to match the subject. So what I just did, if my subject has 2 bathrooms, is it just 4,000? Thank you. If my subject has, can't talk and type at the same time. Bathrooms, 4,000. Thank you. Okay. Subject has 2 bathrooms, comp has 1. By adding that $4,000, I have added the value of a bathroom. I did not go in there and add a bathroom. I added the value of a bathroom. My subject has a fireplace, comp 1 does not. Do they match? No, so I need to make a match. Thumbs up says I increase, thumbs down says I decrease. What do I need to do? I need to increase. I need to add to the comp the value of a fireplace, which again, the intensive study and research tells me that that goes for $2,000. Yeah. I thought I heard something. So we had our sales price of 118,000. We added the value of a bathroom. We added the value of a fireplace. So now we get an adjusted value of $124,000. This is as comp 1 as it relates to the subject. If I change the subject, then we're going to have a different relationship, right? We're going to have different features, different things to study. So now why don't you guys study comp 2 as it relates to the subject and tell me in a private chat what you think the adjusted value is. Make sure you're just looking at comp 2 as it relates to the subject, not comp to comp, comp to subject. Question comes in, do they tell you the prices of the bedroom, bathroom, and fireplace? Yes, they've got to tell you what the bedroom, bathroom, and fireplace, for example, goes for. Ryan? I wanted to know what the adjusted value is after you study comp 2 as it relates to the subject. What's the adjusted value? So let's see what we got with comp 2. Y'all doing the hand trick? You don't have to do the extent, you know, because you guys are going to be at PSI testing center talking about, okay, down, down, and down, you know. You don't have to do it to that extent. Some of you do it for my test, but you might want to modify it a bit. So, subject as it relates to comp 2. My subject has 3 bedrooms. Comp 2 has 4. Isn't 4 more than 3? Yeah. So comp 2 is a superior product than the subject. Thumbs up for increase, thumbs down for decrease. We're going to decrease. We've got to decrease comp 2 by the cost of a bedroom. So we had our sales price of $126,000. A bedroom goes for $4,500. So we're going to deduct the cost of a bedroom to make the comp match the subject. My subject has 2 baths, comp 2 has 2 baths. Do I need to do anything? No. My subject has a fireplace, comp 2 has a fireplace. Do I need to do anything? Technically, which is one is the better comp is the one with the fewer adjustments, right? So of the 2, which is the better comp? Isn't comp 2 a better one? But see, we got to have something to compare. And again, the appraiser is going to want at least 3. So this is just, you know, for an example. But if you have 3, now you really have something to compare and contrast. So we had our purchase price of $126,000. We're going to deduct for a bedroom the $4,500. So that gives us an adjusted value of $121,500. You and I would look at the seller and say your probable sales price is between $121,500 and $124,000. The appraiser would put more weight. This is what I mean by correlation. The appraiser would put more weight on the bedroom or the bathroom or the fireplace. They don't just add it all up and average it out. So the appraiser would get to a number between this, between the $121,500 and the $124,000, but they would take it a few steps further, determine which part of it is more valuable, which piece of it is more value, and they would provide an actual estimate of opinion. Remember, it's just their opinion of value.
Julie?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Finish your thought, sorry.
I was just going to say, and the reason why it's an estimate, the reason why it can vary, like we just said, I chose to study this property's bedroom, bathroom, and fireplace. But you could come in and study the garage, the square footage, and the age, right? So that's why it's an opinion. That's why it's an estimate, because we're not all studying the same thing. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. I was wondering, I think I don't understand the numbers here. So you have 1 bath for $4,500 and 1 fireplace for $4,000. Then the $2,000 is for 1 bedroom. Am I correct?
The bedroom is $4,500. The bath is $4,000.
Ah, I see.
And then the
dividers.
fireplace is $2,000.
Oh, they're actual dividers. Gotcha.
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
Yeah.
I was just trying to separate those. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Questions on the sales comparison approach? Just one of the approaches to value that the appraiser can take. There's others. We're not done yet. They're studying as much as they possibly can. Can I erase the red? Let's see. Why did we add 2000 to comp 1? So my subject has a fireplace. Take your hand and hold it down beside you. And comp 1 does not. So how do I make my right hand match my left hand? I add. I increase it. That's what helps us determine if we add or subtract. I hear you guys. This was the most confusing thing to me as well. The hand trick changed my life. Do the hand trick. Here's your subject. Here's your comp. How do I make it match? I add. Here's my subject. Here's my comp. How do I make it match? I deduct. Always adjust the comps to match the subject. Never, ever, ever adjust the subject. Y'all don't touch the subject. Okay. The next approach, or let me say, another approach that the appraiser hat back on, we're done being brokers for a bit. Another approach that the appraiser can take to help them determine value, come to their estimate or opinion of value, is called the cost approach. The sales comparison approach is best for single-family homes and land, resale single-family homes and land. The cost approach is best for special use properties. Examples of special use properties would be schools, churches, libraries, medical buildings, hospitals. Another thing often used in the cost approach is new construction. Sales comparison approach gets resale. Cost approach gets new construction, especially in a newer development. Remember what we just said, you can't compare a home that was built this year to a home that was built 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Farmland, possibly, absolutely, special use property. The reason they're special use property, schools don't get sold every day, right? Libraries don't get sold every day. So it's going to be a stretch to find a closed comp. You may have to go to like another city or something to find the last time a library was sold. So farms, absolutely. The reason we do use new construction in the cost approach is because it allows the builder to put, or the appraiser to put value on the land and the structure. And that's what the cost approach does. It separates, that puts value on each separately. So the appraiser will put a value on the land, and then they're going to put a value on the structure. They're going to study the land as if it was vacant. And then they're going to study the structure. What's the cost to build, labor costs, supply costs. So best for special use properties, cost approach. And when the appraiser's putting value on the structure, once they've separated the two and they're putting value on the structure, there's one or two things that they consider when studying the structure. They may study the structure looking at the reproduction cost, which is an exact duplicate If you were gonna build this exact building, exactly how it is today, what would the reproduction cost be? Think of like historic buildings. If we want to build something new in Old Salem, we need it to keep looking like Old Salem. So what would it cost to reproduce exactly an Old Salem? Or they may help put value on the structure by studying the replacement cost. This is not an exact duplicate, but it serves the same purpose. If we were going to build a new school today, aren't we going to build it differently than a school that was built in even the 80s, the 90s? I mean, my school didn't have like, internet, Wi-Fi, all that fancy stuff, all those. I can't imagine what new schools look like these days. I can't even. But there's newer amenities, there's newer features. So a school is a school. We're still building it for the purpose of the school, but it's not an exact duplicate. Construction costs have changed, methods, materials, how it's wired. And a few things now that we decide, once the appraiser decides, are we going to look at the reproduction costs or the replacement costs? A few options they have to help them determine these costs. Probably the most common one used is the square foot method. And the square foot method says cost per square foot times the number of square foot. You guys remember when we meant cost per square foot in Unit 4? What do we say the word per meant sometimes? Just a fancy way of saying divide, right? So there's your formula. If you take the cost of the structure and divide it by, I'm just making numbers up, divide it by the square foot, that's going to give you your cost per square foot. So what we just determined so far is that every single square foot costs $136.36. There's 1,100 square foot, and every single one of them costs $136.36. So what this method says, first we got to find the cost per square foot. But now what we're saying is, now that we know that cost per square foot, this is where the appraiser starts. They know the cost per square foot, they know the number of square foot. So that's how they can arrive to a value of $150,000. The first formula is a refresher from Unit 4. So now that we know that each, and the appraiser knows that each square foot costs $136.36, the appraiser determines there's 1,100 square foot, which tells them the value of this using the square foot method is $150,000. This is the most common, simplest for the appraiser. They may also use unit in place, which just looks at construction costs. How much does it cost to build? It looks at material, labor, profit, overhead. And they may also use the quantity survey method, which just looks at the raw materials. What does lumber cost, for example? What are the raw materials? Again, square foot method being the most common, the easiest, simplest. Look with me, if you will, in your book before we go on. Page 448 is our sample cost approach to value. This appraiser has already used 155 Potter Drive using the sales comparison approach. Now this appraiser wants to use 155 Potter Drive using the cost approach. The appraiser has three approaches, and they're going to use as many of the three as they can to help them arrive to their opinion, to their estimate of value. So the first thing this appraiser did was he put value on the land. So he used the square foot method. He determined the lot size is 60 by 135 or $450 per front foot. So he figured out the land was valued at $27,000, and then he had site improvements like driveway, walks, landscaping. So he put a total value on the land of $35,000. He put a value on the land as if it were vacant. If there were no structure, what could we sell this land for? And he determined we could sell it for $35,000. Then they studied the building. So you use the square foot method again, put a value on the building at 97.5. We're getting ready to talk about depreciation next. I just didn't want this page to get away from us. So he has to account for depreciation. So he deducted. And that gave him a depreciated value of the building of $81,750. So he put a value on the land, a value on the structure. And when he brought them two together, he used the cost approach saying $116,750. Remember the sales comparison, he said $116,500. So using the two approaches, he's awfully close, isn't he? He got $116,500 on the sales comparison, and now he's at $116,750 at the cost approach. So as mentioned, when putting value on the structure, the appraiser also has to take into account depreciation. For our purposes, land does not depreciate. For our purpose, the structure depreciates. Depreciation is just the loss in value for any reason. Things lose value over time. They depreciate over time. And we got a couple, the appraiser has a couple different types of depreciation. We'll look at each of these. They talk about physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and economic obsolescence. So the three categories of depreciation. So if we talk about physical deterioration first, there are two types of physical deterioration. The first type of physical deterioration is curable physical deterioration. This is just normal wear and tear. Don't structures need a new coat of paint every once in a while? Don't they just need some regular routine maintenance? This is just curable meaning it's physically and economically feasible to fix. It's just part of owning a home, part of owning property. You're going to have to replace the roof every once in a while. Curable physical deterioration. It's physically and economically feasible to fix it. Incurable physical deterioration is not physical or economically feasible. Foundation issues, structural issues tend to get really expensive really fast. And it might be that the property is not worth fixing the structural issue, fixing the crack in the foundation. I feel the need to say a note here that I am not a structural engineer. I'm not telling you that this crack is bad. I'm just using this as an example. That's my disclaimer. Some structural issues can get expensive. They're just not economically feasible to correct, to fix. So physical deterioration can be curable or it can be incurable, fixable or not. Another type of depreciation is functional obsolescence. And again, we have two types of functional obsolescence. Curable functional obsolescence are just outdated features, outdated designs. This picture wears very close to my heart. My bedroom growing up had blue shag carpet. And I wish it was as pretty as the picture you're looking at right here. That is a curable functional obsolete. Shag carpet has come and gone. Could it come back? Hang on. Things tend to circle back, don't they? Brass faucets, fixtures, they're starting to make a comeback. They're curable because they can be replaced. It's a functional design that's outdated, but you can change the carpet. You can replace the faucet. Curable, functional, obsolete. So then incurable, functional obsoletes can't easily be fixed. It's not possible. It's an outdated design that can't be fixed. For example, a couple examples. You may find an older home that doesn't have central AC. They might just have window units. It may not be economically feasible to put in central AC, run all that ductwork. This cute little house that you guys are looking at, this was a listing I came across a couple years ago. Isn't it cute? It was built in 1920. It's obviously had some updates, some vinyl siding and some good updates. Y'all want to know what's wrong with it? It's a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Back in 1920, that was all right, right? Today, we all want our own bathroom. It's not functionally, it's an outdated design that's not easily fixable. And that could help, that could affect the depreciation. The last type of depreciation that the appraiser considers when studying the structure and the cost approach is economic obsolescence, and there's always only one. Economic obsolescence is always incurable. This is your surrounding factors. These are things in the environment that you cannot do anything about. Where are my Winston-Salem people? Go down Griffith Road off of Haynes Mall Boulevard. It runs behind Village Tavern. We all know where Village Tavern is. And you run down that road and you go until you get to the very end, and Griffith Road dead ends into Clemensville Road. And what we're looking at in the intersection of Griffith Road and Clemensville Road is the sewage treatment facility, the sewage treatment plant. Have you ever driven by there on a hot August day? It does not smell good, does it? That is economic obsolescence. It's the environment that there's nothing you can do about that. Anybody ever driven through Canton, North Carolina? It's up in the mountains. Yep. Canton, North Carolina is a paper mill town, and it does not smell good. I had a friend from college. I went home with her one weekend, and she's, oh, you get used to it. Don't want to get used to that. That's horrible. It was the outside environment. There was nothing that we could do about that. This is an incurable, outside of the property boundaries, possibly the proximity or the location of a landfill. Again, a hot July day, you may walk out on your front porch. It's not going to smell good. So with depreciation, again, they look at just kind of a few things. The age life method just looks at the effective age of a building. The effective age says how long the building has value, how long it contributes to the value. Each year, structures lose value. The more you drive that car off the new lot, the more value it loses, right? Same things with your property. So the economic life is not, see, I keep doing that tonight. Sorry, you guys. The economic life is not the actual life, not the actual age. But it just tells us the number of years in which we can expect the property to still have value. At the end of the economic life, it's not going to fall down. It's not going to crumble in on itself. But this gives us an idea of how long it's going to remain effective, how long it's expected. And the most common way to depreciate a value over time, or building, excuse me, a structure over time, is to use the straight line method. So the straight line method, let's say they determine that the economic life is 30 years. They say that this building can have value for 30 years. So we start on day 0, and we say for the next 30 years, this building will still have value. And what the straight line method does is it allows it to depreciate the same amount each year. So let's say, for example, this building is valued at $500,000 back in the day when we bought it. And we've decided its effective age is 30 years. So what, I had to pick that number. 30. So what we're saying is that each year, and I'm going to round, each year, this building depreciates $16,667. Year 1, it depreciates $16,667. Year 3, year 15, year 27. Every single year, it loses $16,667 in depreciation. So where we are in the effective age, if we're on year 15, the appraiser knows that we're halfway through the value. If we're on year 29, it's only got a value left of $16,667. Where we are in that economic life helps the appraiser determine how much value it has left. So again, the cost approach. We have the full package. The appraiser starts with looking at the land and the structure, and then they're going to separate. They're going to study the structure. They're going to look at the value, the other improvements, minus for depreciation to figure out where we are in the economic life. They study the land separately. Put an estimate value on the land as if it were vacant. They can do the value of the land based on either the sales comparison approach, or maybe they use the square foot method. Once they have a value on the structure and they have a value on the land, then they can combine them together and arrive at one figure. And that gives the appraiser the cost approach to value. We're going to use the sales comparison approach for resale single family homes and land. Cost approach is best for special use. But because of the way the cost approach is designed, studying the land and studying the structure, the appraiser can almost always use the cost approach. Give them something to compare to. And they're going to put the most weight on whatever type of property it is. So again, back to our appraiser in our book, the cost approach, they came up with 116,750. The sales comparison approach, they came up with 116,500. They're going to put more weight on the 116,500 because 155 Potter Drive, I'm thinking, is a resale property. So of the two, studying the two, we're awfully close, aren't we? But remember, the appraiser doesn't get to give a range. The appraiser has to give a specific number, and it's probably going to be closer to the 116,500 because it's a resale. Questions on the cost approach? The third approach to value the appraiser can take on page 450. I'm not going to start this tonight. Please don't go anywhere yet. I got a quick announcement for you guys. The third approach is the income capitalization approach. This is where we'll start tomorrow. This is the best approach for studying or putting value on a property on an income producing property. This is a rental property. It produces an income. And what the income capitalization approach, its theory says that the value of the building is dependent on how much income it produces. How much rent does it collect? This could be an apartment building. This could be a retail shopping center, an office park. So if it doesn't produce an income, then the appraiser is not able to use the income capitalization approach, in which case they could only use the sales comparison and the cost approach. So that's what we say. They have three options available, and they're going to use the ones that they can based on the type of property. So this is where we'll pick up tomorrow. After 17, we do unit 13. We'll blow through that one pretty quickly tomorrow. We may even get started on unit 11 tomorrow as well. I do have a quick announcement, you guys. I just said we'd be together. There's a chance I may not be able to be with you guys tomorrow. I'll share with you. We found out today that my mother-in-law has to have open heart surgery tomorrow. So we're hoping and praying that everything goes well. I have every intention of being here tomorrow, but in the event I can't be, I got coverage for you guys. So I got Ann Rashid on the standby. If I need her tomorrow, she'll absolutely jump in and she'll pick up with you guys on the income capitalization approach. It's really important to me that you guys don't skip a beat, especially this close to your exam. So here's the deal. This is what you guys need to know for tomorrow. If you do not hear from Lane or I, log on to my Zoom class tomorrow like you always would. Before you log on, check your email. And if you have an email from Lane or I, it will have Ann's Zoom link and you can go with her. You guys will be in good hands. She'll get you through 17, 13, and probably even start on 11. Thank you guys for your kind words. I hope I'm with you tomorrow. Everybody's really positive, including her. So I think that goes a long way. But I just want to make sure that I have a backup, and I'm appreciative of Lane and Carolina School of Real Estate for jumping in and working with us. We're an amazing, I'm not tooting our horn, but we really are a great group of people that work well together. So part of the reason why I'm here is for situations like this. So check your email tomorrow. No email, I will see you guys tomorrow. Email, you'll see Ann, and there will be further instructions about what next week looks like. Okay, thank you guys. That's really nice. That's what I have. Thank you guys. Y'all have a good evening. We'll see you when we see you. Good night.